So one of the sexier yet more underrated weapons of the Middle Ages was definitely the flail, an extremely simple weapon yet extremely deadly as found out by the Hussites during the 15th century. The flail was primarily an agricultural tool used for threshing grain, consisting of two sticks attached to each other, connected by a chain. However, if you added a few spikes to the end of it, you could turn any old Tom, Dick and Harry into a deadly killing machine capable of twatting a knight out of existence who's trained his entire life not to be twatted out of existence. Of course, you couldn't just put a bunch of flail-wielding peasants onto the battlefield in an infantry formation and expect them to deal with something such as a cavalry charge or even just a few well-trained soldiers, as the flail doesn't even lick the surface of defensive capabilities compared to something like a billhook, as it needs time to rev up. And if you are swinging your member around ready for your opponent's charge like most men do on a Friday night, you're probably going to bonk your mate left and right of you, meaning you'd now need a looser formation, but then the cavalry is just going to spank you left, right and centre. Where the flail truly excelled was during the Hussite wars of the early 15th century, with the Hussites being a rebellious religious movement primarily made up of peasants and the poor of society, and because they didn't have access to the fancy weapons such as swords, they made do with these agricultural weapons such as flails, and it was inside their wagenburgs where it was truly terrifying. The wagenburg or wagon fort was a bunch of wagons chained together on the battlefield to form a defensive fortification, and each wagon consisted of a team of around 20, with around 6 to 8 being polearms and flail users. Here's our chap with the flail, around 4 to 8 crossbowmen, 2 handgunners, 2 drivers and 2 shield bearers, all weapons that required little training and little to no strength to use, which made them perfect for a peasant army. Working in tandem, the wagenburgs are an absolutely huge counter to heavy cavalry charges that were deployed by the Crusaders who tried to put down this Hussite movement, and if any of those soldiers got close to the wagenburg, past all the ranged weapons and artillery, and didn't have their morale broken at that point, the flail users could get a nice big swing and bonk over the top, as they didn't have to worry about hitting their mates either side of them, and they didn't have to worry about losing their momentum, as an enemy swing wasn't going to get you behind this wooden shield of a wagon. The flail has also been depicted as a one-handed weapon known as the military flail, with a shorter handle, shorter chain, and a spiked ball or blunt ball on the end of it, otherwise known as a morning star or holy water sprinkler, which is a great name, but it's actually dubious whether these were actually used on the battlefield. In tight battlefield situations, the flail would be hard to control and gain momentum on, as similar to the other flail, without bonking your mates either side of you, and if you did get your full weight behind a hit, and if that hit was deflected, it would probably be horrendous for your skull. It would bounce back up, get your teeth right through your brain, and you'd probably die. So the military flail is seen as something that probably wasn't used a lot, but it might have been used occasionally, but it wasn't as common as a sword.